Don't be scared, it's just me, Rachel GNS Middle. Gilbert and Sullivan is my middle name, and my middle name is my last name. And I am here today to explore the magic of the Gilbert and Sullivan operas by very pedantically ranking every element of them. And today I realised that it was about to be Halloween when I posted this video, so rather than putting the Grand Duke dialogue on this day, I'm going to put the Ruddigore dialogue on this day instead. Dan, who is my boyfriend, and I had a very fun few hours filming these together. I hope you agree that these are good, these clips. I could have wished that I'd done, in hindsight, more of these dialogues with other people, because I do think it is really fun, but I also like the whole split screen thing. So give me some feedback about how you like me filming the dialogues, and I will do Sorcerer, Pinafore and Thespis in the way that you all like them done after this whole ranking malarkey is over. Don't mind me, I just slightly changed the frame of the picture there. So, for a start, I am going to discuss with you the parameters that I am going to mark these scenes out of. For the first time, I'm actually not going to involve beauty/poetry. I think for a similar reason to that of like Yeoman and the Gondoliers, the dialogue seems to be much more conversational and less about big speeches with lots of amazing phrasing and poetry in it. I think that this is meant to be conversations between real people. I can't get the framing of this right. That looks marginally better. I mean, it is Halloween. Maybe there's a mischievous spirit that is interfering with my ability to frame this shot. What I do like is when I move close, it gets more dramatic. So yeah, I'm not going to worry about beauty/poetry. I will draw attention to when particular lines are beautiful, but those marks will be absorbed into the other categories in this instance. I'm going to do, as usual, dramatic/comedic impact out of 20. I am also, in this instance, and this instance alone, going to do character out of 20. The reason I'm doing this is because I think, much like Mikado and maybe Grand Duke, which I could have done something similar with actually, Ruddigore's main strength, I think, is its characters. I mean, Mikado has many other strengths, but Ruddigore's main strength, I think, is just how good and complex its characters are. I think we're going to find that when I rank best ensemble of characters, I definitely think Ruddigore is a big contender to win that category. So character is going to be out of 20. So when I see a scene that really shows you vividly one or more character, that's going to get a very high mark. I'm also going to give it a mark out of 10 for importance to narrative. Forgive me, dramatic emotional impact will be out of 20, and then we'll also have comedy out of 10. I do think that Ruddigore is really funny, but I do think it is erring on dramatic emotional rather than comedy, so I'm doing my best just to give these scenes as big a mark as I can possibly give them. So with that in mind, let's get started.
Nay, gentle maidens, you sing well, but vainly, for Rose is still heart-free, and looks but coldly upon her many suitors.
It's very disappointing. Every young man in the village is in love with her, but they are appalled by her beauty and modesty and won't declare themselves, so until she makes her own choice, there's no chance for anybody else. This is perhaps the only village in the world that possesses an endowed corps of professional bridesmaids who are bound to be on duty every day from 10 till 4, and it is at least 6 months since our services are required. The pious charity by which we exist is practically wasted. We shall be disendowed, and that'll be the end of it. Dame Hannah, you're a nice old person. You could marry if you liked. There's old Adam, Robin's faithful servant. He loves you with all the frenzy of a boy of 14.
Nay, that may never be, for I am pledged.
To whom?
To an eternal maidenhood. Many years ago I was betrothed to a godlike youth, who wooed me under an assumed name. But on the very day which our wedding was to have been celebrated, I discovered that he was no other than Sir Roderick Murgatroyd, one of the bad baronets of Ruddigore, and uncle to the man who now bears that title. As a son of that accursed race, he was no husband for an honest girl. So madly as I loved him, I left him then and there. He died but 10 years since, but I never saw him again.
But why should you not marry a bad baronet of Ruddigore? All baronets are bad, but was he worse than other baronets?
My child, he was accursed!
But who cursed him? Not you, I trust.
The curse is on all his line, and has ever been since the time of Sir Rupert, the first baronet. Listen, and you shall hear the legend.
Okay, so first of all, I don't know what I was thinking about having dramatic emotional impact being 20 and comedy being 10. I do think it should be the other way around like I usually do it. Because I think this scene isn't really that funny, but I do think most of the scenes in Ruddigore are very funny. So this one, like, this is going to come quite far down the bottom for me. I think the narrative is great. I'm actually going to give it a 9 out of 10 for narrative. The only reason I don't give it a 10 is because I don't find it that exciting. And I always think narrative is best when it is delivered in a very exciting and emotional way. We do slightly connect to it because Dame Hannah is explaining the story of her youth, and I think that can be very moving. What didn't help with me in this scene, and I do think I messed this scene up when I did it just then, because I didn't bother to kind of switch between bridesmaids. It made it look as if just one bridesmaid had that whole speech, and that would be very static and boring. So I actually did make that scene look a bit worse than it was. So apologies for that. I will do better not next time, because I have no more of these. I've already filmed the Grand Duke one, so we're just going to have to live with that forever. So, dramatic emotional impact. I'm going to give that a 7 because I do think that this story that Dame Hannah is telling to the girls, I do think it is actually quite moving, or it certainly can be. Not that Dan Cavendish's performance didn't bring a tear to everyone's eye, but you know what I mean, with the right lighting and the right setting. I think that could be very moving. Character, I don't think we learned too much kind of about the bridesmaids, like the character of the chorus we did learn a bit. Dame Hannah we learn a bit. Yeah, I'm going to give that a 7. I think that's good. Comedy, however, this is out of 20. I mean, considering what we've got coming up, I think I'm going to give that an 8, to be honest. I really don't find the scene that funny at all. It has a job to do. It has a job to deliver narrative, and it does that. But it's not very much more than that. And honestly, we have so many scenes to get through. I don't really want to talk about this one for much longer. But yeah, I don't think it's the worst opening scene. And I do like playing Zora. I had a lot of fun playing Zora when I played her back in 2006. But there's not really too much substance to this scene when we look at the other scenes that we're going to be talking about soon.
Ah! Whither away, dear Rose? On some errand of charity, as is thy wont?
A few gifts, dear aunt, for deserving villagers. Lo, here is some peppermint rock for old Gaffer Gaddaby, a set of false teeth for pretty little Ruth Rowbottom, and a pound of snuff for the poor orphan girl on the hill.
Ah, Rose, pity that so much goodness should not help to make some gallant youth happy for life. Rose, why dost thou harden that little heart of thine? Is there none here away who thou couldst love?
And if there were such an one, verily it would ill become me to tell him so.
Nay, dear one, where true love is, there's little need of prim formality.
Hush, dear aunt, for thy words pain me sorely. Hung in a plated dish cover to the knocker of the workhouse door, with naught that I could call my own save a change of baby linen and a book of etiquette. Little wonder if I have always regarded that work as a voice from a parent's tomb. This hallowed volume, composed, if I may believe the title page, by no less an authority than the wife of a Lord Mayor, has been through life my guide and monitor. By its solemn precepts I have learnt to test the moral worth of all who approach me. The man who bites his bread or eats peas with a knife, I look upon as a lost creature. And he who has not acquired the proper way of entering and leaving a room is the object of my pitying horror. There are those in this village who bite their nails, dear aunt, and nearly all are wont to use their pocket combs in public places. In truth, I could pursue this painful theme much further, but behold, I have said enough.
But is there not one among them who is faultless in thine eyes? For example, young Robin. He combines the manners of a Marquis with the morals of a Methodist. Couldst thou not love him?
And even if I could, how should I confess it unto him? For lo, he is shy and saith naught.
Oh.
You see, this scene is a little bit more interesting. It's got a few more flavours. It's got all that nice character stuff. So this scene, I'd say I'm going to give it a 9 for character. The only reason I'm not going to give it a 10 is because I do think that some of this scene does make actors fall into pitfalls, for want of a better word. It's very easy to fall into the trap here of making Rose very unlikable. I've seen this so many times, and the thing is, maybe this is just something that I'm not wrong about. I mean, everything's subjective, but maybe this is something where I really do think differently to most people about how these parts should be played, because I just can't stand it when I see Rose delivering this speech, which is very funny, but delivering it as if she actually really thinks less of these people. You know, because it just makes you not like her. There are men in this village who eat peas with a knife, dear aunt. You know, I can't stand it when she's like, for want of a better word, like a real bitch. Like, I can't stand it. Because what do you gain by that? I don't understand it. So what I try to do, if I'm directing it or if I was ever playing Rose, which would be nice, I would give her like a little bit more pathos. I think of it a little bit like how I think of my misophonia. That is this disorder where I am very, very sensitive to sound, especially the noise of people eating or people breathing or snoring or making sounds near me. And it really does get in the way of my life and affects all of my relationships. It has, you know, ever since I've been a child. So it's a very horrible disorder. And the trouble is, what is the worst thing about it is that you can't really tell people, oh, would you mind eating a bit less quiet? I mean, usually I just leave the room. But if I can't, like, say if I'm on tour and I'm trapped in a van with people and I can't get out, like, sometimes I have no choice but to try and ask people, would you mind eating a little bit quieter? I've got an issue. Sometimes people have responded really well. Most of the time they really haven't, because the trouble is, when I ask if people can eat a bit quieter, they mistake that as some kind of etiquette thing, like, oh, I don't like it, I think it's disgusting. Whereas it's more like, I can't cope with it, like, please, I know it's my issue, but if there's anything you can do to eat quieter, I'd really appreciate it. I'm getting anxious just thinking about it. But I think if you can embody that in Rose, like, if you can make Rose's need to have people behave in a certain way around her more to do with anxiety than to do with her just being prim and proper. I mean, look, the girl was abandoned as a baby. She's got issues, man. And I much prefer to see a likeable character who has got flaws than just somebody who's just a bitch for no reason. And so I hate that. And I just, as soon as I see Rose come on stage and just some presents for the villagers, dear aunt, I'm like, oh god, like, I'm gonna have a bad time. Make your characters likeable. Why wouldn't you? I don't get it. Maybe it's just me that's crazy. Narrative. There's not too much narrative in this scene. We learn a bit more about why Rose doesn't go for these men that are throwing themselves at her. Again, it's just anxiety. She's worried. Like, anxiety is a medical condition. And this girl has anxiety. Obsessive compulsive disorder, probably. I'm just going to diagnose all these characters. So I'm going to give the narrative a 7. We don't learn loads about the plot, but we are learning a bit about Rose's character. Comedy, I mean, that speech is very funny. And as I was saying, funnier, I think, if it is delivered like a genuine fear, more than like her just being prim and proper. If it's like, there are people can't deliver it like that on a stage because you can't whisper, but you know, that kind of energy. Do you see what I mean? Please tell me if you agree. Like, don't just think I don't want anyone's opinions. If you think that you like it when Rose is unlikable and you don't like it when she is, like, tell me that. I will listen to you all. So I think there are some jokes in this scene, but it's not like laugh out loud funny. I'm going to give it a 12 for comedy. I think that's a fair mark. Dramatic emotional impact. It's not too heavy, apart from if the actor playing Rose is able to deliver this monologue in a way that makes you a bit concerned for her, which I think is pretty cool. I'm going to give it a 6, and then we're going to move on.
Poor aunt. Little did the good soul think when she breathed the hallowed name of Robin that he would do even as well as another. But he resembleth all the youths in this village, and that he is unduly bashful in my presence, and lo, it is hard to bring him to the point. But soft, he is here.
Oh, Mistress Rose!
Master Robin?
I wish to say that it is fine.
It is passing fine.
But we do want rain.
Aye, sorely. Is that all?
That is all.
Good day, Master Robin.
Good day, Mistress Rose. I beg pardon.
You were about to say?
I would fain consult you.
Truly?
It is about a friend.
In truth, I have a friend myself.
Indeed? Oh, I mean, of course.
And I would fain consult you.
About him.
About her.
Oh. Well, let us consult one another.
Okay, talk about one of the best scenes in the canon. This scene is just precious, and what I like about it is just how utterly real it is. I don't think I've ever had a conversation quite as awkward as this one, but you know when you're starting to really like a person, and there's like this moment when you look at them and you kind of acknowledge it. And from that point onwards, like, so before your conversation's been flowing really freely, you've got everything in the world to talk about, and then suddenly you have a look and it's like, oh, there's something here, there's something going on here. And then suddenly you like forget every word in the English language, or whatever language you speak. Like you just can't get anything out at all. It's like, oh, yeah. Oh, it's passing fine, yeah. But we do want rain. Oh, yeah, we want rain. Oh, and it's so awkward. Like the longer you can make those pauses, like the braver you can be with them. I think it's so awesome. I absolutely love this. Dramatic emotional impact. Honestly, if this was done like really, really well, it's not quite a 10. I'm going to give it an 8 though, because just... it's so relatable, that feeling of just being utterly tongue-tied, and that there's so many things that you want to say. I'm so attracted to you. I think you're such a beautiful person. I really want to ask you if you'll consider being my wife, but I'm just so taken aback by how wonderful you are. And then, you know, she's just thinking, please ask me. Please ask me. And it's a bit like the duet that follows it, but this is just... precious. And in terms of character, I'm giving this a 10. I think that both of these characters are just amazing, and characters I want to play both of these characters one day. I don't know when I'm ever going to get to play Rose, you know. I'm sure I've got a few more Margarets in me, but I might get too old to play Rose. Please, somebody cast me as Rose. I'd love to have a go at her. Narrative, not really much narrative in this one, but we are learning. You know, we are seeing these characters and actions after we've talked about them before. So I'm going to give it a 6. I'm not going to be too cruel with the narrative mark. Comedy, though, it is funny, but it's more funny like than it is. That's hilarious. I don't think it quite reaches some of the really, really good scenes, but I am going to give it a 14. I do think it is slightly funnier than the 2 scenes we've had previously. All in all, I think this is a really good scene. So far, it's winning. It's got a 38 out of whatever it's out of 50. So, let's move on to the next scene.
Oh, poor child. I sometimes think that if she wasn't quite so particular, I might venture... But no, even then, I should be unworthy of her.
My kind master is sad. Dear Sir River Murgatroyd.
Hush! As you love me, breathe not that hated name. 20 years ago, in horror at the prospect of inheriting that hideous title, and with it the ban that compels all who succeed to the baronetcy to commit at least one deadly crime per day. For life, I fled my home and concealed myself in this innocent village under the name Robin Oakapple. My younger brother Despard, believing me to be dead, succeeded to the title and its attendant curse. For 20 years I have been dead and buried. Don't dig me up now.
Dear master, it shall be as you wish. For have I not sworn to obey you forever in all things? Yet, as we are here alone, and as I belong to that particular description of good old man to whom the truth is a refreshing novelty, let me call you by your own right title once more. Sullivan Murgatroyd, Baronet of Ruddigore. It's like 8 hours at the seaside.
Oh, my poor old friend. Well, there were more like you.
Would there were indeed. But I bring you good tidings. Your foster brother Richard has returned from sea. His ship, the Tom Tit, rides yonder at anchor, and he himself is even now in this very village.
My beloved foster brother? No, it cannot be.
It is even so, and see, it comes this way.
This is another of those scenes which does its job perfectly, but as a result of it being mostly narrative driven, it doesn't really come high in any of the other categories. So I'm going to give it a 9 for narrative, just because I'm preserving those 10s for times that there's really true emotion that comes along with those narratives. It's not fair for me to say that there's no emotion. Of course it is, because Robin's recalling something very traumatic that he's gone through, having to essentially fake his own death and escape rather than have that awful life. The thing is, in that video, me and Dan were just doing it on our sofa, but there's many productions that I've seen, and in fact, I might go as far to say all the productions that I've seen of Ruddigore, including the one that I directed, which was the first show I ever directed for Four-Bear Theatre. I don't think anyone has ever managed to get the true weight of this scene that I've seen. It's such a heavy situation. And as we've learned from the Mikado, sometimes when you have really high stakes, the highness of those stakes and the level to which the characters are taking them seriously, even though they're quite silly, that's really funny. So I think the more serious you can make this, the more funny it will be. I'm not going to give this too high of a mark for comedy. Again, I'm just aware that there's such funny things coming up, so I'm just being a little bit conservative. But I am also going to give it a 14, because that bit with Adam going, "So River Murgatroyd, Baronet of Ruddigore," it's like 8 hours at the seaside. It is very good at delivering narrative, like just this opera in general. Because look, we've had one scene with really heavy narrative, 2 scenes that were more character-based. And now I've got another scene that's less character-based. I'm only going to give it a 6 for character. Adam isn't really a very vibrant character. And also it doesn't really have a very strong dramatic emotional impact. It could, as I'm saying, it could. So I'm going to give it a 7. Just recognising that this would be something that is really tearing Robin apart. But usually I just see it delivered very like, no, don't dig me up now. I see it usually delivered very matter-of-factly. And directors and actors do not give that the weight that it deserves. So overall, that gets a 36 out of 50. All these things are doing pretty well. There's not, I think, one bad scene in Ruddigore. Things are just going to fall down because they're kind of short and don't have much weight. But I don't think there's going to be a single one that's bad.
Richard!
Robin!
My beloved foster brother and very dearest friend! Oh, welcome home again after 10 long years at sea. It is such deeds as you have just described that cause our flag to be loved and dreaded throughout the civilised world.
Why, Lord love you, Rob. That's but a trifle to what we have done in the way of sparing life. I believe I may say, without exaggeration, that the merciful little tomtit has spared more French frigates than any craft afloat. But 'tain't for a British seaman to brag, so I'll just stow my jaw in tackle and belay. But vast even, messmate. What's brought you all a cockbill?
Alas, Dick, I love Rose Maybud and love in vain.
You? Love in vain? Come, that's too good. Why, you're a fine, strapping, musky young fellow, tall and strong as a tuggerland mast, taut as a forest day, aye, and a barren knight to boot if all had their rights.
Hush, Richard! Not a word about my true rank, which none here suspect. Yes, I know well enough that few men are better calculated to win a woman's heart than I. I'm a fine fellow, Dick, and worthy of any woman's love. Happy the girl who gets me, say I, but I'm timid, Dick. Shy, nervous, modest, retiring, diffident, and I cannot tell her, Dick, I cannot tell her. Oh, you've no idea what a poor opinion I have of myself, and how little I deserve it.
Robin, do you call to mind how years ago we swore that, come what might, we would always act upon our heart's dictates?
Aye, Dick, and I've always kept that oath. In doubt, difficulty, and danger, I've always asked my heart what I should do, and it has never failed me.
Right. Let your heart be your compass, with a clear conscience for your binnacle light, and you'll sail 10 knots on a bowline clear of shoals, rocks and quicksands. Well, now, what does my heart say in this here difficult situation? Why, it says, Dick! It says, it calls me Dick because it's known me from a babby. Dick! It says, you ain't shy, you ain't modest, speak you up for him as is. Robin, my lad, just you lay me alongside, and when she's becalmed under my lee, I'll spin her a yarn that shall serve to fish you two together for life.
Will you do this thing for me? Can you? Do you think? Yes! There's no false modesty about you. Your, what I would call bumptious self-assertiveness, I mean this expression in its complimentary sense, has already made you a boatswain's mate, and it will make an admiral of you in time if you work it properly, you dear incompetent old imposter. My dear fellow, I give my right arm for 1/10 of your modest assurance.
So this scene is just an absolute masterclass in writing of character. Dick Dauntless, I mean, I don't think he scored like crazy high on my tenor list, but that is, I think, in large part to the fact that he kind of disappears in Act 2, and that is an issue for him, so I do think that people playing Dick Dauntless might find that a bit annoying. But certainly this scene, I'm going to give it out of 10. Oh, I've just realised I'm supposed to be giving character out of 20. I'm going to correct my previous ones. This one gets an 18 for character. I think that the way these characters are portrayed are just so good. In the writing, like, Dick Dauntless just bounds off the page. And what's so amazing is that, we're given a reminder about Robin's true status. So again, I'm going to give that an 8 for narrative. We're also learning about Dick and Robin and his relationship. We are just barreling through this story here, and the fact that Dick talks the way he does is just inherently so funny. I love everything about this scene. Like, I love you have no idea what a poor opinion I have of myself and how little I deserve it. Like that alone, oh, it's so fun. I'm going to give it a 16 out of 20 for comedy. I do think there are better scenes, but this one is really good. Dramatic emotional impact, I don't think that's going to rank too highly. I'm going to just give that a 6. I think it's more comedic. We're meeting Dick Dauntless for the first time. And importantly, and this is what a lot of people on the internet seem to be missing, Robin and Dick Dauntless talk here about a promise they made to each other a very long time ago, which is If we're in a situation and our heart is screaming at us to do something, we are duty bound to do that. So when people are saying, oh, like Dick Dauntless swanned and stole Robin's girlfriend, it's like, well, for a start, they weren't actually going out. And like, yeah, Robin liked her, but so did Dick, and Rose seemed to like him back. So, like, no one's actually done anything really wrong here. It's like, it's not very nice that Dick Dauntless chose Rose knowing that would upset Robin, but, I mean, we have to believe what these characters are saying here. Like, Dick Dauntless falls in love with Rose on first sight, and yeah, he's a worldly man, but he's also not really that sharp of a person. He obviously changes his mind quite quickly about things too. But when people are saying, oh, Dick Dauntless is a horrible character, he's like plotting and conniving, it's like, no, he's just very impulsive. You can see that Dick Dauntless, from all of his actions, you can see how impulsive he is. And so when people judge Dick Dauntless really harshly for this behaviour, that makes me a bit sad. Like, people are flawed. Like, come on. Anyway, this is a good scene. So they're actually being marked out of 60, and this one gets a 48 out of 60.
Ah, it's 1,000 pities he's such a poor opinion of himself. For a finer fellow don't walk. Well, I'll do my best for him. Plead for him as though it was for your own father. That's what my heart's the remarking to me just now. But here she comes. Steady, steady it is. By the poor Admiral, she's a tight little craft. Come, come, she's not for you, Dick, and yet she's fit to marry Lord Nelson. By the flag of old England, I cannot look at her unmoved.
Sir, you are agitated.
Aye, aye, my lass, well said. I am agitated, true enough. Took flat aback, my girl, but 'tis not. 'Twill pass. This here heart of mine's a dictating to me like anything. Question is, have I a right to disregard its promptings?
Can I do aught to relieve thine anguish? For it seemeth to me that thou art in sore trouble. This apple?
No, my lass, take that. I'm took flat aback. I never seen anything like you in all my born days. Poor buckle me if you ain't the loveliest girl I've ever set eyes on. There, can't say fairer than that, can I?
No. The question is it meet that an utter stranger should thus express himself? Yes. Always speak the truth.
I'd no thoughts of saying this here to you on my own account, for, truth to tell, I was chartered by another, but when I see in my heart it up and it says it, this is the very last for you, Dick. Speak up to her, Dick. It says, it calls me Dick because we're at school together. Tell her all, Dick. It says, never sail under false colours. It's mean. That's what my heart tells me to say, and in my rough, common sailor fashion I've said it. And I'm a-waiting for your reply. I'm a-trembling, miss. Look here. That's nervousness.
Now, how should a maiden deal with such an one? Keep no one in unnecessary suspense. Behold, I will not keep you in unnecessary suspense. In accepting an offer of marriage, do so with apparent hesitation. I take you, but with a certain show of reluctance. Avoid any appearance of eagerness. There you will bear in mind that I am far from anxious to do so. A little show of emotion will not be misplaced. Pardon this tear.
Rose, you've made me the happiest blue jacket in England. I wouldn't change of places with the Admiral of the Fleet, no matter who he's a-hugging of at this present moment. But, axing your pardon, miss, might I be permitted to salute the flag I'm a-going to sail under?
An engaged young lady should not permit too many familiarities. Once.
As a quick point of interest, I've never really read these lines of Dick Dauntless's before, and I'm very good at Dick Dauntless. Like, this is a part that just kind of was easy for me just to improvise. I'd never read these lines, and as you'll see, I have to do very few jump cuts in it. I got them all mostly right, which was amazing to me. But I find that when I'm able to read a character easily, that's not really a reflection of how amazing I am. It's just a reflection of how well these characters are written. And Dick Dauntless is an incredibly well-written character. And I do think that in terms of just his construction and his complexity, he is one of the best characters in the canon. As I said, the only thing that lets him down is just his disappearance in Act 2. So apart from a continuing amazing characterisation of Dick Dauntless and Rose, in fact, I am just going to go right ahead and give this a 19 out of 20 for character. I think both of them are just so well reflecting their previous selves, and they're acting in precisely the way that I'd expect them to be reacting. In fact, why am I giving it a 19? I'm going to give it a 20. So it's really good. So what I love most about this scene, what I find the funniest, is the fact that they are in this potentially very romantically charged situation. They clearly have this attraction to each other, but Rose just keeps being drawn back to this book again, like, and that is just so funny. It is, because it is, in matter of fact, probably a mental illness, but because it's relating to something so silly, like a book of etiquette, it makes it funny. This is probably one of the funniest scenes in the canon for me. I do think it is incredible. I'm going to give this a 19 out of 20 for comedy. Everything in this scene, and I think it wasn't really terribly clear from me doing it on my sofa, because obviously, you know, I'm not in a theatre, but to really get that, but when you see this scene in a theatre and it's like really sizzling with tension, and you can tell that they feel something for each other. I don't know exactly what, but and Dick Dauntless, the thing is, he's being very respectful of her. He's just like, oh, what shall I do? What shall I do? So he's having a conflict. Rose is having a big conflict, but in a way, like, the book is what kind of calms them down and stops them from just like running together and kissing or whatever. But then she also likes Robin in the next scene. But you know what? It's actually possible to have feelings for two people at once. Who'd have thought it? Narrative. I mean, this is quite a big part of the story, because the fact that Dick Dauntless does this does set us up for a lot of shenanigans later, like especially in Act 2. So I do think it's important to set up Rose and Dick Dauntless as a couple that could have been or could still be. So I'm actually going to give this a 9 for narrative. I also think that it's just delivered in such a fun way that doesn't make you think you're getting story or like any exposition. Like, you are just really having fun here and enjoying these two characters just having these internal conflicts. Internal conflicts which result in like a lack of action is just something that's always funny to me. But dramatic emotional impact, again, because there's so much tension here, I'm going to give it a 7. I don't think I can really give it any more than that, but I do think that there is the scope to have a lot of emotional, dramatic, romantic tension in this scene. It's just so funny, her back and forth. I will not keep you in unnecessary suspense. She goes back to the book again. I think it can be hard to get the timing of this right, and there's so many different ways of doing it as well. There's definitely no one way of doing this. The language is just also so funny. Pa buckle me, if you ain't the loveliest girl I've ever set eyes on. How good a line is that? He is just so generous with his language as Dick Dauntless. He is so joyful and full of life, and Rose is so repressed. And so just seeing that comparison between this scene and then the one that she had with Robin. So in this scene, what is holding Dick Dauntless back is not his nervousness. He is nervous, but in a different way. He's nervous just because of how utterly beautiful she is and what this might do to his friendship with Robin. But he is certainly not nervous about expressing his feelings in the way that Robin was extremely nervous. Possibly, Dick Dauntless actually does Robin a favour here in the long run. inadvertently, of course, but perhaps it was kind of opening up Rose the idea that she could be a person who feels romance. That means that when Robin comes along and she's faced with him again and realises that he does love her and he has loved her all along, then she goes, oh yeah, I did good at that really impulsively just said, you are actually genuinely the person I really like. And that is valid. I don't like it when people accuse these characters of being like two-dimensional and fickle and shallow, because that is real. That is how Rose would act in that situation. She's been brought to life, like Dick Dauntless has kind of awakened something inside of her, and then she projects that onto the person it was meant to be projected onto. And look, Dick Dauntless is fine. He's going to be fine at the end of this opera. We all know it. But what a fantastic scene. This has got 55 points out of 60. Will it win? I don't know.
Well, what news? Have you spoken to her?
Aye, my lad, I have, so to speak, spoke her.
Oh, and she refuses.
Why, no, I can't truly say she do.
Well, then she accepts. My darling!
Hail the bridegroom, hail the bride, when a natural knot is tiding, the breezes and the breezes, hail the bridegroom, hail the bride. Now, what should a maiden do when she is embraced by the wrong gentleman? Belay, my lad, belay. You don't understand. Oh, sir, belay, I beseech you.
Belay?
You see, she accepts, but it's me.
You?
Hail the bridegroom, hail the bride, when a natural knot is tiding, the breezes and the breezes, hail the bridegroom, hail
Will you? What does this mean then?
My poor lad, my heart grieves for thee, but it's like this. The moment I see her, and just as I was a-going to mention your name, my heart it up and says it, Dick, you fell in love with her yourself, it says. Be honest and sailor-like. Don't skulk under false colours. Speak up, it says. Take her, you dog. And with her, my blessing. Hail the bridegroom, hail the bride, when the nuptial knot is tied.
Will you be quiet? Go away. Vulgar girls.
What could I do? I'm bound to obey my heart's dictates.
Of course. No doubt. It's quite right. I don't mind it. That is not particularly. Only it's disappointing, you know?
Oh, but, sir, I knew not that thou didst seek me in wedlock, or in very truth I should not have hearkened unto this man, for, behold, he is but a lowly mariner, and very poor withal, whereas thou art a tiller of the land, and thou hast fat oxen, and many sheep, and swine, a considerable dairy farm, and much corn, and oil.
That's true, my lass, but it's done now, ain't it, Rob?
Still, it may be that I should not be happy in thy love. I am passing young and little able to judge. Moreover, as to thy character, I know naught.
Nay, Rose, I'll answer for that. Dick has won thy love fairly. Broken-hearted as I am, I'll stand up for Dick through thick and thin.
Thank ye, messmate. That's well said. That's spoken honest. Thank ye, Rob.
Yet, methinks I have heard that sailors are but worldly men, and little prone to lead serious and thoughtful lives.
And what then? Admit that Dick is not a steady character, and that when he's excited he uses language that would make your hair curl. Grant that, he does. It's the truth, and I'm not going to deny it, but look at his good qualities. He's as nimble as a pony, and his hornpipe is the talk of the fleet.
Thank you, Rob. That's well spoken. Thank you, Rob.
There! That's only a bit of it.
But it may be that he drinketh strong waters which do bemuse a man, and make him even as the wild beasts of the desert.
Well, Suppose he does, and I don't say that he don't, for rum's his bane. And ever has been. He does drink, I won't deny it, but what of that? Huh? Look at his arms, tattooed to the shoulder. No, I won't hear a word against Dick.
But they say that mariners are but rarely true to those whom they profess to love.
Granted, and I don't say that Dick isn't as bad as any of them. You are. You know you are, you dog. You devil of a fellow. A regular out-and-out Lothario. But what then? I mean, you can't have everything. And a better hand at turning in a dead eye don't walk a deck. And what an accomplishment that is for a family man. No, not a word against Dick. I'll stick up to him through thick and thin.
Thank you, Rob, thank you. You're a true friend. I've acted according to my heart's dictates, and such orders as them no man should disobey.
This is also just one of my favourite scenes in the canon. I think actually the previous scene, this one, and the next one may actually all three of them end up in the top 10, like my top 10 scenes in the canon. This is just so perfect. Like, I think it might even be better than the last scene. You have these three characters, two of whom want to be together, quite obviously. They realise that, after the bridesmaids leave, I'll talk about the bridesmaids in a moment, but after the bridesmaids leave, quite early in the next part of the scene, Rose and Robin definitely realise that, we love each other, but they have to get out of it in the right way, because Rose has to do things in the right way. She can't say, I've changed my mind, I don't want to marry you anymore. She has to say, well, you need to, I'm trying to find reasons, and I just want your validation. And Robin, he's saying such a clever thing because he doesn't want to antagonise Dick or kind of put him down. So he's complimenting him, but by complimenting him, by drawing attention to what Dick Dauntless himself values, he is highlighting qualities that he knows that Rose won't like. And so you have this situation where you've got two characters that are actually having this private conversation, basically, in a kind of code, while this other character just completely obliviously is just, thank you, a true friend, thank you. It's so funny when people are talking at odds with each other, but there's one character who doesn't realise. That always makes me laugh. It's a little bit like the whole Leonard, don't you know me, and Wilfred in that trio. It's so, the energy is a bit like that. Two people are kind of talking on a meta level, like they're having a different conversation to the one that Dick Dauntless thinks they're having. And oh my god, those bridesmaids at the start, that is hilarious. And they keep interrupting, then eventually Robin's like, go away! Oh, girls. She accepts, but it's me. Hail the bridegroom, hail the bride! It's just like, stop! This is chaos. I love chaos. This is kind of quite Grand Duke-esque. Might I say it smacks of Grand Duke. So I'm going to leave dramatic and emotional impact for a moment. Character, again, this just gets a 20. Everyone is perfectly representing themselves. Everybody is doing exactly what I imagine they'd be doing. Like, you can see that Dick Dauntless isn't terribly clever. You can see he is just steadfastly doing his duty. He's like he's come out of Pirates of Penzance, basically. And then you got Robin, who is trying to convince Rose and himself and Dick Dauntless that kind of them extracting themselves from each other and then that new couple forming is the right thing to do. But Rose and Robin both know what's going to happen. It's all about just about doing things in the right way, in the proper way, in a way that is very funny for the audience. So narrative, this is actually a very important part of the story, and it's delivered in such a good way that I am actually going to give it a 10. And comedy, this gets a 20. I mean, just people at odds with each other is just my favourite thing. It's just full marks for me. The dramatic and emotional impact, I can only give it a 7 because I do think it is very funny. I mean, does it even deserve a 7? I don't know, actually. I might come back to this later because it's not terribly emotional dramatic. It's more just a comedy of errors scene. So I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. Hey, but that still puts it in first place. That is still 56 out of 60. So let's see how the next scene does, shall we?
A maiden, and in tears.
Can I do aught to soften thy sorrow?
This apple? No. Tell me, are you mad?
I?
No. That is, I think not.
That's well. Then you don't love Sir Despard Murgatroyd. All mad girls love him. I love him. I'm poor Mad Margaret. Crazy Meg. Poor Peg.
Thou lovest the bad baronet of Ruddigore. Oh, horrible, too horrible. You pity me.
Then be my mother. The squirrel had a mother, but she drank and the squirrel fled. Hush, they sing a brave song in our parts. It runs somewhat thus. The cat and the dog and the little puppy sat down in a I forget what they sat down in, but so the song goes. Listen, I've come to pinch her.
Mercy, whom?
You mean who?
Nay, it is the accusative after the verb.
True. I have come to pinch Rose Maybud.
Rose Maybud?
Aye, I love him. He loved me once, but that's all gone. He gave me an Italian glance, thus, and made me his. He will give her an Italian glance and make her his, but it will not be, for I will stamp on her, stamp on her, stamp on her.
Did you ever kill anybody?
No? Why not? Listen. I killed a fly this morning. It buzzed and I would not have it, so it died. Pop, so shall she.
But behold, I am Rose Maybud, and I would fain not die pop.
You are Rose Maybud?
Yes, sweet Rose Maybud.
Strange. They told me she was beautiful. And he loves you? No. No. If I thought that, I should treat you as the auctioneer and the land agent treated the ladybird. I would rend you asunder.
Nay, be pacified, for behold, I am pledged to another, and lo, we are to be wedded this very day.
Swear me that. Come to a commissioner and let me have it on affidavit. I once made an affidavit, but it died. It died. It died. See, see they come, Sir Despard and his evil crew. Hide, hide, they are all mad, quite mad.
What makes you think that?
Hush! They sing choruses in public. That's mad enough, I think. Go! Hide away or they will seize you. Hush, quite softly, quite softly.
So yeah, this scene is kind of massively traumatically triggering for me, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. It is one of my favourite scenes in the canon, possibly even my favourite scene in the canon. We shall see. I don't know if it's going to beat the other ones, actually. So, for a start, it's extremely funny. Secondly, it gets over the character of Mad Margaret perfectly well, and certainly Rose as well. She acts in the way you'd expect her to. She is baffled, terrified, and has no idea what to do with this crazy woman. I think I delivered a line weirdly there. I did the thing where I went, nay, it is the accusative after the verb. But I wonder if actually it should be said to Margaret, right? No, it is the accusative after the verb. As if the fact that Margaret didn't know that grammar thing actually is more evidence to Rose that she's mad. Like, you are truly a monstrous person. How could you not know that? Yes, sweet Rosemary. But I think I was actually being a little bit inauthentic by delivering those lines as asides. Margaret certainly has a lot of asides, and they should be asides, because she's the kind of person that is very introspective and kind of has, I'm not saying literal voices in her head, but just a stream of consciousness. She has thoughts in her mind that keep her company. And I know what it is to be like that. I remember when I performed this at the Gilbert and Sullivan Festival, I didn't get publicly adjudicated because I'm a professional, but in the private adjudication, Stephen Turnbull actually remarked on how real I seemed, and that was such a huge compliment to me, and it was also massively validating as like a neurodivergent person, because I was genuinely just acting that character as myself. And I think that's why like this part and this scene is just very, very important to me. So, narrative, we are learning about Margaret and her relationship to Despard a bit, which is important for later, but I'm only going to give it a 9 for narrative, not a 10, because I don't think we're learning a hell of a lot. This is such a good narrative, Ruddigore. It's a shame that it kind of goes a bit funny in Act 2. Comedy, though, I mean, this scene is so funny. Again, we just got that imbalance of characters here. We've got somebody who's really repressed and terrified to say anything, and somebody who is utterly fearless and says every single thought in her head. And the balance of those two people is just extremely funny and dramatic emotional impact. Okay, I'm going to give a 9 rather than a 10, because I know that there are some scenes where people are actually talking life and death stakes. And Margaret, even though things may seem life and death to her, and I think actually her song would get full marks for dramatic emotion, I don't know if the scene does. Certainly the "you pity me, then be my mother." I think that's very emotional. And when people deliver that line, or indeed any of this scene, in a way that is kind of just like doing that and going around being like just over energetic and a kind of pastiche of mad, it's like, what are you saying? And I know that's probably what Gilbert did, but also Gilbert was a Victorian man who maybe didn't have a very like accurate or interesting depiction of mental illness. So it's one of those characters that I'm kind of thinking we are better qualified today to characterize Margaret more than Gilbert was back in the day. Also, art constantly evolves, and the way that we see these characters will differ now than how Gilbert saw them, and that is a good thing because the world is changing and evolving. So even if Gilbert intended this character to be a certain way, well, maybe now, 100 and whatever years later, we have 150 years more experience of the world and of people and of science and understanding. So why wouldn't our interpretations be better than Gilbert's? Like, why should we always be doing what we think W.S. Gilbert wanted? He's dead. He's a dead man, and he's off on his honeymoon. So while I have the greatest respect of Gilbert for giving us these characters, what we do with them now is entirely our own business. And I see the merit in sticking with tradition, where tradition can actually enhance the storytelling or the characters. And in part because I think often it's better that way, but also in part because I certainly don't want to alienate G&S fans who've seen these shows done the same way for many decades. But that's the absolute last thing I want to do. And I think actually most of my fans are probably older than me and not young people. And even though that's wonderful, and it actually gives me like a lot of hope, because I do seem to be able to bridge this gap between the older generation and Gen Z. Like, I got loads of Gen Z friends now. Like, my colleagues at work, most of them are Gen Z. And the upcoming tour I'm doing, I think there are 2 people in it who've like just graduated. So I'm going to be so down with the kids. Like, I know exactly what the kids want. And I love Gen Z. I really, really love Gen Z people. I think that they are just the most kind of considerate and understanding generation. Like the way they speak to each other. And obviously there will be kind of nasty Gen Zers, of course there will be, but the way that generally young people speak to each other nowadays is like so healthy and so different to the way that I used to speak to people in my 20s and we'd speak to each other. And when I think of like the amount of like even slight racism and homophobia that was just very prevalent in everyday language, and that just wouldn't happen today. I think Gen Z are just so much more in touch with the world. And yeah, of course, there are drawbacks as well. I do think that they're probably a bit more addicted to technology than people of my generation are, but that's not really their fault, and hopefully that will just change. I don't know, but I think as the world just gets more technology obsessed, doesn't it? Anyway, this has turned into just a rant about how much I love Gen Z, but I do love Gen Z, and I hope that I can get more young people kind of really liking my stuff. So if you are Gen Z, will you please like and comment and tell me that you are? And just know that I love you and it's going to be okay.
Poor children. How they loathe me. Me! Whose hands indeed are steeped in infamy, but whose heart is as the heart of a little child. But what is a poor baronet to do when an entire picture gallery of ancestors steps down from their frames and threatens him with an excruciating death should he hesitate to commit his daily crime? Ha. I am even with them. I get my crime over the first thing in the morning. Then, for the rest of the day, I do good. I do good! I do good. 2 days since I stole a child and built an orphan asylum. Yesterday, I robbed a bank and endowed a bishopric. Today, I carry off Rose May Bud and atone with a cathedral. This is what it is to be the sport and toy of a picture gallery. But I shall be bitterly revenged upon them. I will give them all to the nation. And no one will ever look upon their faces again.
Axe your honour's pardon.
Observed. Oh, and by a mariner. What would you with me, fellow?
Your honour, I'm a poor man-o'-war's man, becalmed in the doldrums.
I don't know them.
And I make bold to ask your honour's advice. Does your honour know what it is to have a heart?
My honour knows what it is to have a complete apparatus for conducting the circulation of blood through the veins and arteries of the human body.
Aye, but as your honour, a heart that ups and looks you in the face and gives you quarter-deck orders that it's life and death to disobey.
I have not a heart of that description, though I have a picture gallery that presumes to take that liberty.
Well, your honour, it's like this. Your honour had an elder brother
It had.
who should have inherited your title, and with it, it's cussed.
But he died. Oh, Riven.
He didn't.
He did not.
He didn't. On the contrary, he lives here in this very village, under the name of Robin Oakapple, and he's a-going to marry Rose Maybud this very day.
Riven, alive? And going to marry Rose Maybud? Can this be possible?
Now, the question I was going to ask your honour is, are I to tell your honour this?
I don't know. It's a delicate point. I think you ought. Mind, I'm not sure. But I think so.
That's what my heart says. It says, Dick. It calls me Dicker because it's entitled to take that liberty. That very young girl would recoil from him if she knowed what he really were. Ought you to stand off and on and let this young girl take this false step and never fire a shot across her bows to bring her to? No, it says, you did not ought, and I won't ought, according.
Then you really feel yourself at liberty to tell me that my elder brother lives? That I may charge him with his cruel deceit and transfer to his shoulders the hideous thraldom under which I have laboured for so many years? Free at last. Free to live a blameless life and to die beloved and regretted by all who knew me.
So, like, as soon as I think I found the best scene, I find another one that I think is even better. This one actually may just get full marks. Has any scene got full marks yet? I don't know, maybe the Patagon tenor one from the Mikado might have done, because I love that one. But honestly, I am completely bowled over by this scene. I mean, let us not forget that you got me and Dan doing it. And bizarrely, I think I play Dick Dauntless better than I do any other character in this video for some reason. I think maybe I was just a bit... once you've played Mad Margaret on a stage, it's very hard to just do it in front of the camera like this. But I'm actually very proud of my portrayal of Dick Dauntless, and I actually want to give him a go, because I think I could probably hit those notes. So I actually am genuinely thinking I might start auditioning for some of these tenor roles, because that would be so much fun. And I think that I've got the right kind of drag energy for Dick Dauntless. Like, I do like a great kind of like macho performance of Dick Dauntless. That'd be great. You know, I think I'd be good at that. So yeah, you're a mess. That's nervousness. This lighting is so good. Oh, no, I was going to do a thumbnail shot. Why was I never on America's Next Top Model? Maybe for a start, because I don't live in America. That could be one of them. That show did not age well. Anyway, I am honestly thinking that this gets full marks. It definitely gets full marks of dramatic and emotional impact. The stakes here for Despard are so high, and especially his opening speech and his closing speech, which, like, mirroring anyone, like, how good is that? And the thing is, this scene is ostensibly a scene between the villains of the piece. But the two of them are so likeable, and you completely understand their actions. And also, it's hilarious how stupid Dick Dauntless is. Like, ought I to tell Your Honour this? Some people, I think that he's scheming, and that actually that was said, that's kind of fake. But I just tend to believe characters. I just tend to believe characters rather than think it's some kind of trick. So that gets a 10 for dramatic emotional impact. It also gets full marks for character. I mean, Despard. Like, Despard and Margaret are characters that just so quickly introduce themselves, you know instantly who they are. And this scene is perfect. 2 days since, I stole a child and founded an orphan asylum. He's a pastiche of a villain, but he's like better than any of these villains because he is actually genuinely like a really decent and vulnerable and understandable and likeable person. And his song is so sad. He is such a sad character, but he's also hilarious. Like, the skill that Gilbert has to create a character like this who is meant to be the villain, or at least is at first, is really likeable, is really funny, and is also just very real and vulnerable and has been through something very, very serious and who has been deeply traumatized by that, who is very much in love with somebody who is also suffering. It's like, what a cracking character that is, and what a brilliant scene. And as Despard's introduction scene, I mean, this may be the best dialogue in the canon, guys. I don't know. Like, honestly, it might be. It gets a 20 for character. I don't even see how I can possibly give it any more. And a 10 for narrative. I mean, how good is it at delivering that narrative? We are learning what is going on, and the course of the story has been changed by Dick saying this to Despard. But at the same time, we're laughing and we're feeling emotions, and we're right there with Despard. And again, a 20 for comedy. Oh my god, this mismatch of energy. All of these characters have a distinctly different energy. Maybe apart from Rose and Robin in their scene. But that's fulfilling a different purpose anyway. All of these characters have such different energy, and that makes for these roaringly funny scenes. Does you want to know what it is to have a heart? Well, I know what it is to have a muscle that, you know, is part of the circulatory system, you know. I do not have a heart of that description. It's really, really funny, and you aren't I to tell you, Runner, this. Despard's opening speech, Despard's closing speech. Riven, well, he didn't. He did not. He didn't. There's so many ways you could read that line, and I'm certainly not saying any one is more valid than the other, but, like, this scene just delivered absolutely straight, and with absolutely every emotion in it, the most genuine you can possibly make it, is, like, in tandem, the funniest and the saddest thing. And this may be the best scene in the canon.
Oh. This is a painful state of things, old Adam.
Painful indeed. Oh, my poor master, when I swore that, come what would, I would serve you in all things forever, I little thought to what a pass it would bring me. The confidential adviser to the greatest villain unhung. Now, sir, to business. What crime do you propose to commit today?
Bill, how should I know? As my confidential advisor, it's your duty to suggest something.
Sir, I loathe the life you are leading, but a good old man's oath is paramount, and I obey. Richard Dauntless is here with pretty Rose Maybud to ask your consent to their marriage. Poison their beer.
No! Oh, that... I know I'm a bad Bart, but I'm not as bad a Bart as all that.
Well, there you are. You see, it's no use my making suggestions if you don't adopt them.
How would it be, do you think? Were I to lure him here, with cunning wile, bind him with good stout rope to yonder post, and then, by making hideous faces at him, curdle the heart blood in his arteries, and freeze the very marrow in his bones. How say you, Adam? Is this scheme not well planned?
It would be simply rude. Nothing more.
Oh.
But soft. They come.
I just changed my hairstyle while I watched that last video. It's not going to last though, it's going to come out really slowly. Or quickly. as the case may be. I just put some hair grips in it. But I don't know, I thought that kind of like Victorian like updo, like gothic updo, I love that kind of fashion. I think I'm slowly getting into more of that kind of Victorian gothic style as I get older. You know, I like to wear corsets these days. I think corsets are quite fun. I find that joke, it would be simply rude, nothing more. I find that like impossible to deliver. Like, I know it's meant to be funny and I know that people do laugh at it, so I think that usually it does come across quite well, but it's a bit on the nose, I think, in terms of comedy. Like, I think it's a line that's very much like it's meant to be funny and people have to laugh, otherwise it's quite awkward. And that's the kind of comedy that I'm not like particularly on board with all the time. So I'm only going to give this scene an 11 for comedy. I think the idea of the joke and how dramatic Robin is being, it is quite funny. And it's funny when Adam says, well, you know, I'm not going to, what's the use of me giving you suggestions if you're not going to adopt them? Right? That's quite okay. I'll give it a 12 because actually that is quite funny. But yeah, generally this scene is quite short. Its narrative is just a bit like, oh, I am now your evil servant and I'm going to suggest a crime that you commit, and the crime, yeah, it's just quite a short scene. It doesn't really do anything for the narrative. I'm going to give it a 6 for narrative. It doesn't obstruct it. It's just a bit wet, I think. It's just a bit flabby. And character, I don't really... Do I get Robin in this scene? I think he is trying to resist being truly evil. And so he's trying to be a kind of dramatic pastiche of evil. That's what I think a lot of people don't get. I think they think that Robin is actually evil. Whereas I think that, you know, he doesn't... He's just play acting and he's actually not very good at it. So his like, I'm going to make hideous faces at them because it's just something that he thinks might be scary in his mind and is actually, nah mate, that's not going to be too good. So I think Robin is keeping his character up. Adam, it's quite funny how he's like getting into it, I guess, but I'm not like particularly bowled over by how good the character is. So I'm going to give it a 14 for character. Dramatic emotional impact, but it's not too much, is it? I'm going to give that a 5. And you know what? I'm only going to give it a 5 for narrative, because as I say, it doesn't obstruct the narrative, but I just don't think it deserves a 6. Like, we're not learning anything about the plot in this. It's just kind of like a little side quest.
So ho, pretty one, in my power at last, eh? Know ye not that I have those within my call who at the lightest bidding would immure ye in an uncomfortable dungeon? What ho, within there?
Hold! We are prepared for this. Here is a flag that none dare defy. And while this glorious rag floats over Rose Maybud's head, the man does not live who would dare to lay unlicensed hands upon her.
Foiled
By a Union Jack.
But a time will come, and then...
Nay, let me plead with him. Sullivan, have pity. In my book of etiquette, the case of a maiden about to be wedded to one who unexpectedly turns out to be a baronet with a curse on him is not considered. Time was when you loved me, madly. Prove that this was no selfish love by according your consent to my marriage with one who, if he not be you yourself, is the next best thing. Your dearest friend.
This scene might be somewhat tainted for me by the fact that it immediately precedes In Bygone Days, which is not a song I care too much for. But then again, I've never really seen that scene and that song performed in like live with the kind of correct emotional weight on it. Like, because I always feel that these characters are somewhat unlikable, and I just want to see what would happen if we actually cared about them. I think Will said that was the case when he did it, when he played Robin back several years ago, but it wasn't filmed, so he'll never be able to prove it to me. I do quite like this scene. It's certainly got a strong dramatic emotional impact. I'm going to give it a 7 for that. Character, though, yeah, everyone is performing as their characters. I think that Robin is continuing to kind of lie to himself when everyone else is pretending to be this big evil villain when we know he's not. He just doesn't have it in him at all. Or maybe he does and he wasn't expecting it, and that's kind of quite hard on him. But I don't think it gets too high for character. I'm going to give it a 15 for character. Slightly better than the scene before it. Narrative, I do think this is pretty good because it's the only time in Act 2, apart from the very end, that we get to see Rose and Dick Dauntless. So we do get to see kind of what happened after the wedding. They're not married yet. I suppose it's because they need Robin's permission. And the fact that it's possible they don't even need it. It's possible that both Rose and Dick Dauntless just want to feel like they've done right by him. So even though he's the bad baronet now, and she can't marry him because that would be against her morals, and it wouldn't be right for her to marry him after knowing what he's done and who he is. But they still respect him enough to say, but we can't do this without you saying it's okay, because we've had a history and like you're Dick Dauntless's best friend. So I think that these two characters really are trying to do the right thing here. And that's certainly not too weak for me. That is pretty strong. So I'm going to give this an 8 for narrative. I think that Robin also, the fact that he does yield, well, he doesn't actually have to. Like, he could be bitter about it and belligerent, but he does yield. He recognises that, well, actually, Rose does have a chance of being happy here. Not as happy as she would have been with me, but still, she would have been. Comedy, though, is where this scene kind of falls down for me. I mean, it's not terrible, and I do love Rose's line. You know, in my book of etiquette, the case of a man who turns out to be a baronet with a curse on him. That is extremely silly, and that deserves at least a 13 for comedy. So, whereas there's elements of this scene that I think are a bit flat, this scene did actually quite well overall, and I think that it's one scene in the canon, if it is delivered with the true weight that it has, would be sublime, would be really, really lovely.
For a week, I have fulfilled my accursed doom. I have duly committed a crime a day. Not a great crime, I trust, but still a crime. But will my ghostly ancestors be satisfied with what I have done? Or will they regard it as an unworthy subterfuge? Oh, my forefathers! Wallowers in blood! There came at last a day when, sick of crime, you, each and every, vowed to sin no more. And so, in agony, called welcome death to free you from your cloying guiltiness. Let the sweet psalm of that repentant hour soften your long dead hearts and tune your souls to mercy upon your poor posterity.
So if we were judging beauty/poetry here, this monologue would get a really high mark. As it is, I'm actually going to give it a 10 out of 10 for dramatic impact. I think this monologue is absolutely superb. It's so wonderful. It's, not going to get... I do think it gets a 16 for character. Something that Will pointed out to me, which I think is actually, if anything, more moving than if it had been otherwise. Once Rose finishes her song and they go off, and Robin's left there alone, his following monologue is then not about what has happened with Rose. It's like, that's done. It goes, for a week I have committed my daily crimes. It's like, it's too painful to even think about what's just happened with Rose. And so he just has to move on to the next horrifying thing. Like, this guy, if you actually were in this situation, this would be so horrible. I know that's, seems like a ridiculous thing to say, but, imagine not only losing the love of your life, who you were just about to marry, but you are now completely alone, well, I guess apart from old Adam, and these portraits that will come to life and kill you if you don't commit a crime every day. It really is horrifying. Narrative, I mean, I can only give it a 7 because it's so short. It doesn't really have too much of an impact on the story, but it does set up the next scene perfectly. Comedy, I'm just going to give this a 10. I don't think that this is particularly funny at all, this scene. I'll give it an 11. Because I do like not a great crime, but still a crime. So this, I do really like this monologue, but I don't want to spend any more time talking about it. But it is, love it.
I recognise you now. You're the picture that hangs at the end of the gallery.
In a bad light, I am.
Oh. Are you considered a good likeness?
Pretty well.
Oh.
Flattering.
Because as a work of art, you are poor.
I am crude in colour, but I have only been painted 10 years. In a couple of centuries I shall be an old master, and then you will be very sorry you spoke lightly of me.
And, may I ask why you have left your frames?
It is our duty to see that our successors commit their daily crimes in a conscientious and workmanlike fashion. It is our duty to remind you that you are evading the conditions under which you are permitted to exist.
Really? I don't know what you'd have. I've only been a bad baronet a week. And I've committed a crime punctually every day.
Let us inquire into this. Monday.
Ah. Well, Monday was a bank holiday.
True. Tuesday.
Ah. On Tuesday, I made a false income tax return.
That's nothing! Nothing at all. Everybody does that. It's expected of you. Wednesday.
On Wednesday, I forged a will.
Whose will?
My own.
My good sir, you can't forge your own will.
Can't I, though? I like that. I did. Besides, if a man can't forge his own will, then whose will can he forge?
There's something in that. Yes, it seems reasonable. At first sight, it does. Fallacy somewhere, I fancy.
A man can do what he likes with his own?
I suppose he can.
Well, then he can forge his own will, stupid! On Thursday I shot a fox.
Here, here. That's better. Pass the fox, I think. Pass the fox, pass the fox. Friday.
On Friday, I forged a cheque.
Whose cheque?
Old Adams.
But old Adam hasn't a banker.
I didn't say I forged his banker. I said I forged his cheque.
On Saturday, I disinherited my only son.
But you haven't got a son.
No, not yet. I disinherited the lad in advance to save time. You see, by this arrangement, he will be born already disinherited.
That's right enough. Yes, it seems reasonable. At first sight, it does. Fallacy somewhere. These arguments sound very well, but I can't help thinking that if they were reduced to a syllogistic form, they wouldn't hold water. Now, quite understand us. We are foggy, but we don't permit our fogginess to be presumed upon, unless you undertake to, well, suppose we say, carry off a lady. Those who are in favour of his carrying off a lady. Those of a contrary opinion. You're never satisfied. Yes, unless you undertake to carry off a lady at once. I don't care what lady. Any lady. Choose your lady. You perish in inconceivable agonies.
Carry off a lady? Certainly not. On any account, I've the greatest respect for ladies. And I wouldn't do anything of the kind for worlds. No, I'm not that kind of baronet, I assure you. If that's all you've got to say, you better go back to your frames.
Very good. Then let the agonies commence.
Ow! Ow! Don't do that! I can't stand it!
Painful, isn't it? It gets worse by degrees.
Stop it, will you? I don't want to speak! Oh dear. Oh dear me.
Better?
Yes! Better now. Whew.
Well, do you consent?
But it's such an ungentlemanly thing to do.
As you please. Carry on.
Stop it! I can't stand it! I agree! I promise it shall be done!
Today.
Today.
At once.
At once! I retract. I apologise. Oh, I had no idea it was anything like that.
For a start, I mean, I just want to point out what a master I am at video editing this sequence. This took us a little while, but it was absolutely worth it. I'm really pleased with how that turned out. And I think that because we were doing it like in that setting, I think I was being deliberately a little silly with it. But the last thing I want to do is undermine the amount of weight that this scene can have. And the thing is, unlike some scenes that I've talked about where I think the comedy directly comes from the high stakes, I do think this scene is an instance where you can kind of choose to go down a more dramatic route or a more comedic route. So I don't think that this can really have both full dramatic potential and full comedic potential simultaneously. So just because of that, I'm going to give it a 9 for dramatic emotional impact, and I'm going to give it an 18 for comedy. That's, for me, the equivalent of taking a mark off. I also don't think it's maybe as funny as some of the other scenes, but and I do think that it's not director proof as well. I think when people don't make those lines really pacey that all the ghosts have, oh god, that it can be interminable. Because this scene is so long. It's really huge, and when people don't do it with pace, it can drag. Narrative, I'm gonna give it, I mean, it's a 10, isn't it? Because that's great. Like this is the heart of the second act. It's like the heart of the whole show, some people might say. This is what people were looking forward to when somebody told them it was going to be a spooky time at Ruddigore. Like, oh, finally the spooky things are happening. It does take quite a while for the spookiness to get into Ruddigore. I think sometimes it's advertised in a spooky way, but yeah, the first half isn't spooky. Actually, that's not fair, because Despard and Mad Margaret are kind of spooky. So, no, fair enough. Maybe you do get away with advertising it in a spooky kind of gothic way. I mean, I'm all for that, because I love the aesthetic. So, yeah, I'm talking in circles. Character. I like how you see Robin's inner conflict. I like how he can't bring himself to agree to carrying off a lady. Like, he simply can't do it. And it takes 3 lots of agonies to kind of make him go against that. But ultimately, you know, he is a little bit of a coward, and, you know, nothing wrong with that. We're all cowards in some respects, and I think that it does show him pretty well. Who's Roderick as a character? I mean, the way I was delivering those lines I mean, I was being a little bit silly with it, but also I'm kind of imagining what it would be like to have been a portrait and not really be a real person. So kind of an echo of your past self and not really your real self. It's just like an image of who you once were. So I'm kind of thinking, if he looked very grand in the picture, he'd just be kind of stuck in that way the whole time, even if there was something more inside of him that wanted to come out. So really, you know, I say I was being quite silly with it, but I think that silliness comes from a truth, I think, about what it really would be like to be in that situation. Like how a ghost might act. Like it wouldn't be, you know, it's just, you're just a little bit like an image of yourself. Nothing really moves, nothing really works. everything is said quite flat because you have no emotions, you're just an image of yourself. And that's kind of quite threatening and cool in a way. So even though it's also funny, I think that's like a really valid way of playing Roderick. Just because there's lots of ghosts on stage that you don't really kind of understand their intentions. I mean, is it really the people themselves, or again just these images? Because they all seem very malevolent. I mean, maybe that's just what being the Baronet of Ruddigore did to them. So in a way, I think the characters are actually like eerily dead on. So I think I might give that a 20 for character. Actually, I'm trying to find a fault with it, and like, yeah, I can't. Like, it's actually so good. So yeah, that gets a 57 out of 60. Really, really cracking scene. So funny, as long as you do it in a fast-paced way. Very dramatic. Very good for character. And integral to the story. And just overall, like a really funking good time. Like when you've got the agonies, you can do anything with that. You can make that a proper kind of horrifying thing, or you can go more down the comedy route, like I did with the Whisk and Dan just now. Like, because when I directed it a while ago, I actually did do, like, he was just in a lot of pain and they were kind of holding him in a kind of magical grip. And that worked fine. I mean, that was great. I think that's probably, you know, maybe what it was originally. I've no idea. Like, I mean, we just don't know what those agonies were. But I think most people do them in a comedic way. The recent Savoy Note one, that was very funny. You should watch that on GS Opera TV. But this scene. Oh, I love this scene.
My poor master, you are not well.
Oh, madam, it won't do. I've seen them. All my ancestors have just gone. They say that I must do something desperate at once, or perish in horrible agony. Oh, you've no idea what those agonies are like. Go to yonder village, carry off a lady, bring her here at once. Anyone, I don't care which, not a word, but obey. Fly!
Something that me and Will spoke about recently is how this scene could be played in such a way, because like Dan and I didn't plan how we were going to do them, and we didn't put too much thought into what we were going to do, but me and Will had talked about how it could seem to Adam like Robin has just gone crazy. Because Adam comes in and Robin's like, I saw them all, Adam. They were just here. They came down from their frames and they said I had to carry off a lady. So can you go and do that, please? Like, he could be totally like shell-shocked. And Adam's like, really? What? Like any lady? Yeah. Like they were just here. All of my ancestors just now. Like they told me to do that. Adam, we need to do this because they're gonna kill me. All my ancestors who were here just now, they're gonna kill me. You won't believe the agonies they put me through. And Adam's like, oh yeah, okay, I'll go and do that for you. So I'm appreciating that could actually have quite a big dramatic impact. So I'm going to give that an 8. Character though, I mean, it's not really long enough to really could give you much of an idea, but I'm going to give it a healthy 12. I'm just giving this quite low marks because I'm aware that the scene's very short. And again, narrative, like it's important this happens, but it's so short that I can only really give it a 6. And comedy, there's not really any jokes in it. I think it's going to get a 7 actually. It's going to get quite a low mark. So yeah, this scene only gets a 33, which is more than I expected it to get, to be honest. It's such a short scene, and that is all.
We have been married a week.
One happy week.
Our new life.
Is delightful indeed.
So calm.
So unimpassioned. Master, all this I owe to you. See, I am no longer wild and untidy. My hair is combed, my face is washed, my boots fit.
Margaret, don't. Pray restrain yourself. Remember, you are now a district visitor.
A gentle district visitor.
You are orderly, methodical, neat. You have your emotions well under control.
I have.
Master, when I think of all you have done for me, I fall at your feet. I embrace your ankles. I hug your knees.
Hush! This is not well. This is calculated to provoke remark. Be composed, I beg.
You are angry with poor little Mad Margaret.
No, not angry. But a district visitor should learn to eschew melodrama. Visit the poor by all means. Give them tea and barley water. But don't do it as if you were administering a dose of deadly nightshade. It upsets them. And when you visit the sick and find them not as well as could be expected, why go into hysterics?
Why not?
Because it is too jumpy for the sick room.
How strange. Master, how can I express the all-absorbing gratitude? Very well, dear. It shan't occur again. Shall I tell you one of poor Mad Margaret's odd thoughts? Well, then, when I am lying awake at night, and the pale moonlight streams through the latticed casement, strange fancies crowd upon my poor mad brain, and I sometimes think that if we were to hit upon some word for you to use whenever I am about to relapse, a word that teems with hidden meaning like Basingstoke, it might recall me to my saner self, for after all, I am only poor Mad Margaret. Daft Meg. Poor Meg.
Poor child. She wanders. But soft. Someone comes. Margaret, pray, recollect yourself. Basingstoke, I beg. Margaret, if you do not Basingstoke at once, I shall be seriously angry.
Basingstoke it is.
Then make it so. Oh.
Despard and his young wife. This visit is unexpected.
Shall I fly at him? Shall I tear him limb from limb? Shall I rend him asunder? Say but the word and I'll...
Basingstoke!
Basingstoke it is.
My brother. I call you brother still, despite your horrible profligacy. We have come here to urge you to abandon the evil courses to which you have committed yourself, and at any cost become a pure and blameless ratepayer.
But I've done no wrong yet.
No wrong? He has done no wrong. Did you hear that?
Basingstoke!
Basingstoke it is.
Why, brother? I call you brother still, you observe. You forget that you have been, in the eye of the law, a bad baronet of Ruddigore for 10 years. And you are therefore responsible, in the eye of the law, for all the misdeeds committed by the unhappy gentleman who occupied your place.
I see. Oh, bless my heart, I'd never thought of that. Was I very bad?
Awful, wasn't he?
And I've been going on like this for how long?
10 years. Think of all the atrocities you have committed, by attorney as it were, during that period. Remember how you trifled with this poor child's affections. How you raised her hopes on high. Oh, don't cry, my love. Basingstoke, you know, Basingstoke. Only to trample them into the dust when they were at the full zenith of their fullness. Oh, fie, sir, fie. She trusted you.
Did she? Oh, what a degraded scoundrel I must have been. Oh, to be sure. But there. Don't cry, my dear. It's all right now. Birmingham, don't you know? Birmingham.
It's Basingstoke.
Basingstoke, of course it is. Yes, Basingstoke.
Then make it so.
There. It's all right. He's married you now. That is, I've married. I say, which of us has married her?
Oh. I've married her.
Oh, I am glad of that. Yes, he's married you now. And anything more disreputable than my conduct seems to have been I've never even heard of. But my mind is made up. I will defy my ancestors. I will refuse to obey their behests. Thus, by courting death, I atone in some degree for the infamy of my career.
I knew it! I knew it! God bless you!
Basingstoke!
Basingstoke it is.
This scene is so good. And something that I didn't realise when I was directing it last time, I remember just like not really knowing what to do and like thinking that this was like sexism. But in reality, this is like literally how Dan does calm me down when I'm having one of these episodes where like the world is going to end. And it's also how I self-soothe as well. Like the other day at work, I got furious because my colleagues had like, and it wasn't their fault, it was partly my fault because I didn't leave clear enough instructions, but a delivery was put away very badly, and I was really angry, and I even still in our WhatsApp group, I am furious, and I went upstairs and I went to my colleagues who were there, like why did no one think to call me? Why did this happen? Okay, look, I'm not angry at individuals, and it's just the situation, and I'm aware that I'm overreacting right now. I just had to have a little rant and then I can calm down. I can already feel myself calm down. Okay, I'm starting to calm down now. I'm starting to see the situation a little bit more logically. And that was literally what I did. I just went upstairs and did that after I saw the state of the room. And so I think that this idea of having a kind of safe word, not in even like a sexual way, but just in this sense, to kind of calm, to like make somebody realise, oh, whoa. It's not that Margaret isn't valid and she can't be wild, but it's just that she is making herself upset. And Despard is there to soothe her and to help her soothe herself. And then she has this idea about it. And the thing is, like, did Gilbert realise that this is real? Did he realise? Because people think this is like, oh, this is a pastiche of melodrama. But like, this is genuinely a very good tactic for like how to deal with your emotions if you're not good at regulating your emotions. The thing is, it's so frustrating to be told to calm down, but Despard does so in such a way that like Margaret herself suggests a way that he can help her. And like, what a healthy relationship they have. I don't much like if you don't Basingstoke at once, I'll be seriously angry. That smacks a little bit of misogyny, but you know, this is Victorian, isn't it? But I think this scene is just so utterly precious in that respect. I love the confusion over who's married her. Like, oh, have I married you? Oh no, I've married her. And I love the way that Dan delivered that, because so often you see Despard kind of not really being very fond of Margaret. It's like, you know, Margaret, poor child, she wanders. Rather than, poor child, she wanders, you know. Not like, that's my wife. Like, I wish I could comfort her. You know? Why doesn't Despard comfort Margaret more? These characters just absolutely love each other. And so when you see it being done where you see how Dan does it in a way that's both very formal and proper, but also soft, and how much he loves Margaret in it. You know, because we are in love in real life, but also he is just a good actor. And I'm sure if someone else was playing Margaret, he'd do the same. But these characters should and do really love each other. And like, that's the first thing he says when he gives up his baronetcy. He's like, well, I can't marry you because, you know, I'm already promised myself to Margaret. Of course, that's like the very first thing I'm going to think of doing. And also, like, he has issues as well. And I think that Margaret is actually a big help to him in that regard, because like sometimes when you're going through stuff yourself, helping someone else go through something similar is actually really healing for you. So perhaps he is dealing with his trauma, in a sense, from everything that's happened to him, from thinking his brother was dead to realising his brother not only was not dead, but that lied to him and actually betrayed him and made his situation a lot worse. He's had ghosts haunting him like every hour of the day and night of his whole life. Like, this man is messed up. But in getting to kind of have control over a situation, i.e. Margaret, in such a way that makes her feel safe and loved, like, they just got this relationship thing, like, totally nailed, and it's so heartwarming to me. The parts of Margaret and Despard are very important to me, and they're two parts that I kind of feel personally offended when I see them played badly. I know that's really horrible, and I shouldn't feel that. And it's one of those times when I know I said that about other parts, like, oh, I can't stand it when people are insistent on characters being played like this one way. And the thing is, I'm not saying they need to be played in a certain way. I think it's more that I'm saying, please don't make fun of these characters or have them be mockeries of people that have mental illness, or just actually kind of not liking each other very much. Because I don't really see what you're getting out of that. I don't really see what anyone would get out of that. And also, like, when you're casting these parts, I mean, cast people that have trauma, that have mental illness. Because, like, we get it, you know? We just do this naturally. Like, it's so funny how when I played Mad Margaret at the festival, I got the feedback, like, she just played her like an ordinary person. I'm like, what? That's because I just said the lines. I didn't actually act at all. Because that is how I am. Like, that is... Though I think there is a few bits in the second act that I found a bit more tricky, but certainly in that first scene with Margaret, like, that's normal. That's normal to me. And so you want someone that's going to do that naturally. And if you're going to have someone that's just going to play mad without knowing what it is to have a mental illness, and I'm not talking about any individuals here, I'm just talking about kind of generally kind of what I've seen in the past. Hire people that have these issues and see what they can bring to your production, and you won't be disappointed. But yeah, this is a really long scene. I do think it is really funny. All the Basingstoke, I mean, obviously the Basingstoke business is classic, and the Birmingham, you know, Birmingham. And dramatic emotional impact, I'm going to give it quite a high mark. Again, I'm going to give it a 9, because I think that seeing Robin go through that character arc and then agree to, yes, like, I'm going to do it, even if it means giving up my life. And actually, Despard and Margaret know that if he does that, Despard will be the Baronet again. Which, I don't know if that is, like, just a plot hole, i.e. something that Gilbert didn't really think of. Or if that's just, Despard's just kind of a bit broken, doesn't really kind of know what else to do. Like, he has to insist on doing the right thing because he's a good person now. And that is his identity, so he has to suggest that. Oh god, it's really nasty. Poor Despard. I really hope he got some therapy after the events of this story. Character, as I say, like, I didn't find Margaret as easy to play in this scene as I did in the first scene. I think what I found was hard, and actually if you watch the Savoy Note production, you'll see me struggle with this, is trying to maintain the kind of crying and upsetness during other people's lines. Because the thing is, there are specific lines where people tell me to calm down, so it means that I have to be reacting emotionally at a certain point. And I don't like that. Like, as an actor, I don't like it being prescriptive, like how long my emotions last for, and the fact that my emotions lasting a certain length of time are directly based on what the other actors are doing on stage. And the thing is, if it was like a longer run or more rehearsal time, that might be a conversation to have with your fellow actors, saying like, or like the director just saying, I'm finding it hard to maintain this level of emotion and keep it genuine. Like, you'll see, I actually fall onto the stage and try and kind of keep it going, but you can see my acting get worse the longer I have to kind of maintain these episodes of just being upset. Because I kind of forget what I'm upset about. So this is really challenging as an actor, this scene. And for that, I don't think I can give character the full marks. But I love Robin's character arc in it. And I love just the fact that Despard and Margaret are just trying so hard. So I will give it an 18. But I'm just docking a couple of marks just because I know that is a bit of an issue for me as an actor. Narrative. I'm going to give this, just because of that small point with kind of not really quite getting why it is that Despard's doing this, and it is a little bit confusing. I'm only going to give it an 8 out of 10 for narrative, but all these scenes are doing pretty good for narrative. Like, nothing's got beneath a 5. It's just that one scene that got a 5 because it was a bit of a non sequitur. And comedy as well. I mean, there's so many funny things in this. I mean, the whole Basingstoke thing, and like Margaret saying, shall I fly at him? Shall I rend him asunder? And then just Margaret and Despard trying to keep a straight face, and Margaret, she could snaps between them. I have master, and it is real. That does happen. It happens inside my own head. I have sudden switches of feelings and emotions. And I don't know what it is I have. I don't know if it's bipolar or borderline or if it's just autism. These are things that I need to get checked out. But NHS waiting lists, man, like they're rough right now, especially for mental health. But anyway, comedy. Yeah, I'm going to give this scene... I'm going to give it a 16 out of 20. I do think it is pretty funny, but I'm giving it less than the Robin and Ghost scene. Oh no, is that fair? Maybe that's not fair at all, actually. Maybe I'll give it a 17. I do think the ghost scene is just persistently very funny, whereas this does have moments which aren't like that funny. So this does have some pathos and some actual story in it as well. So yeah, I'm happy with that mark. 52 out of 60. That's still a very, very good mark. I know it's a very iconic scene because of Basingstoke, but it's a very long scene. It's a bit unwieldy, and it's maybe not perfect. Like, there are maybe just a few things that mean it loses marks.
Master, the deed is done.
What deed?
She is here, alone, unprotected.
Who?
The maiden. I've carried her off. I had a hard task, for she fought like a tiger cat.
Oh, great heavens, I'd forgotten her! I'd hoped to have died unspotted by crime, but I am foiled again! By a tiger cat? Produce her and leave us. This is not what I expected. Well, sir, and what would you with me? Oh, you have begun bravely indeed, unappalled by the calm dignity of blameless womanhood. Your minion has torn me from my spotless home and dragged me, blindfold and shrieking, through hedges, over stiles, across a very difficult country, and left me here, alone and unprotected at your mercy. Not helpless, coward, sir. For approach one step, nay, but the 20th part of 1 poor inch, and this poniard shall teach ye what it is to lay unlicensed hands on old Stephen Trusty's daughter. Madam, I am extremely sorry for this. It's not at all what I intended. Anything more correct, more deeply respectful than my intentions towards you, it would be impossible for anyone, however particular, to desire. Blah! I am not to be tricked by smooth words, hypocrite. But be warned, in time, for there are without 100 gallant hearts whose trusty blades would hack him limb from limb, who dared lay unlicensed hands on old Stephen Trusty's daughter. And this is what it is to embark upon a career of unlicensed pleasure.
Hark ye, miscreant. You have secured me, and I am your poor prisoner. But if you think I cannot take care of myself, you are very much mistaken. Now then, it's 1 to 1, and may the best man
Win! What's the matter? Have you carried her off?
I should think I have. There. Look at her! She terrifies me!
Little nannykin.
Roddy? Doddy?
My own. Old love. Why? How came you here?
This brute! He carried me off! Bodily! But I'll show him!
Stop! What do you mean by carrying off this lady? Are you aware that once upon a time she was engaged to be married to me? I'm very angry indeed.
Now, I hope this will teach you a lesson in future. Not
Hold your tongue, sir.
Yes, Uncle.
Have you given him any encouragement?
Have I given you any encouragement? Frankly now, have I?
No, frankly, you have not. Anything more aggressively correct than your conduct would be impossible to desire.
You! Go away!
Yes, Uncle. Sorry. Excuse me.
This is strange meeting after so many years.
Very. I thought you were dead.
I am. I died 10 years ago.
And are you pretty comfortable?
Pretty well. That is, yes, pretty well.
You don't deserve to be. For I loved you all the while, dear. And it made me dreadfully unhappy to hear of all your goings on. You bad boy.
Again, my video editing skills are second to none. I'm very pleased with that. I love the way that scene was edited. I even timed it with the music as well. I managed to loop the music. I used a track off Spotify. I had to do it, so it's going to get a copyright claim. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make thousands of pounds off this video. Not that I've made a single penny from any of my other videos, because you need 10,000 subscribers to do that. So if you are 10,000 people, please subscribe to my channel so I can get paid for these videos. Or you can donate on the page below, which I'm going to link to at this moment. Anyway, we're talking about this scene. The thing is, this is a dramatic roller coaster. It starts off, I mean, I will say actually it starts off in a way that's quite hurried. Would it have been worth having another monologue? No, actually I think it was right to start in this way, because I do think we are approaching the end of the show now and it does need to barrel through. So I do think it's good that Adam comes right on. Oh no, this is a situation, I'd forgotten about that, and suddenly she's there. I actually do think that is correct. I think having it any other way maybe would feel a bit draggy. Dramatic emotional impact. I mean, just this horrendous roller coaster they go on. And then at the end, Totty, little mannequin. It's really beautiful. It's actually very, very moving, the end of this scene. And to think that we've got through all that blindfolded and shrieking through hedges and rather difficult country. It's so funny. This is like a true chance for an alto to really shine. And this scene is just a gift for any actor. So I'm going to give this a 10 for dramatic emotional impact. And narrative, another 10. I think it's just so spectacular. However, I would say that character, I do think that they could have buried the lead a bit with Dame Hannah, because we do not get the impression that she'll be like this at all in the opening scene. So, I mean, I think it's very funny, but I don't really know kind of if this is really genuinely Hannah or not. And knowing that she's like this, it means you have to kind of alter your perception of her in Act 1. She can't just be this kind of very gentle old lady. Like, she has to be somebody who is kind of quite strong. But then maybe that's where the humour comes from, in seeing somebody who's this like little old lady suddenly be really violent. So I'll give it a 17 for character. Like, I do like Robin, I like Adam, I do like Hannah, but I will admit that it does seem a little bit at odds with the way she was in Act 1. Comedy, it is very funny, actually, this scene. I think it's actually just as funny as the ghost scene. I'm going to give it a 9 for narrative, because I do think that this scene had very much a kind of comedic purpose, and the narrative was second to it. But I'm still going to give it a 9, because a lot does happen in the scene. I'm going to give it an 18 for comedy. That's the same as what the ghosts had. It is just amazing. Like, the only reason I'm not giving it higher is because there aren't many actual jokes in it. It's more just how quickly things are happening. But at the end of it, there are some funny lines, like when Roderick's like, go away. to Robin. And I thought you were dead. Well, yeah. Are you pretty comfortable? Pretty well, yeah. And again, it's interesting how we are going back to the same tone that Rose and Robin were talking in when we were talking about the weather. It's like British people revert to the weather, and it's kind of full circle. Like Dame Hannah says, where true love is, there's little need for prim formality. And suddenly they go back into the small talk. So, Hannah, maybe still has a few things to learn about love herself, And this is so moving.
Well, you don't deserve to be. For I loved you all the while, dear.
And it made me very sad to think of all your goings on, you bad boy. No, it's both moving and funny. It's kind of sexy. It's one of those few times when, along with that scene in Utopia Limited, which I didn't admittedly think was sexy when I read it, but this, I think, is an attempt at a kind of flirtatious remark. Yeah, I really, really do like this scene. It came a lot higher than I thought it would. Really, really well done.
Little nannykin.
Roddy, Doddy.
It's not too late, is it?
Oh, Roddy.
I'm quite respectable now, you know.
But you're a ghost, ain't you?
Well, yes. A kind of ghost.
But what would be my legal status as a ghost's wife?
It would be a very respectable position.
I should be the wife of a dead husband, Roddy.
No doubt.
But the wife of a dead husband is a widow, Roddy.
I suppose she is.
And a widow is at liberty to marry again, Roddy.
Dear me, yes. That's awkward. I never thought of that.
No, Roddy, I thought you hadn't.
When you've been a ghost for a considerable time, it's astonishing how foggy you become.
Stop a bit, both of you.
This intrusion is unmannerly.
I'm surprised at you. I can't stop to apologise. An idea has just occurred to me. A baronet of Ruddigore can only die through refusing to commit his daily crime.
No doubt.
Therefore, to refuse to commit a daily crime is tantamount to suicide.
It would seem so.
But suicide is in itself a crime. So, by your own showing, you ought never to have died at all.
I see. I understand. Then I'm practically alive.
Every man jack of you!
My brother ancestors, down from your frames.
Oh.
You believe yourselves to be dead. You may take it from me that you're not, and an application to the Supreme Court is all that is necessary to prove that you never ought to have died at all.
Hurrah! Rose, when you believed I was a simple farmer, I believe you loved me.
Madly. Passionately.
But when I became a bad baronet, you very properly loved Richard instead.
Passionately. Madly.
But if I should turn out not to be a bad baronet after all, how would you love me then?
Madly. Passionately.
As before?
Why, of course.
Oh, my darling.
Hail the bridegroom, hail the bride, when your natural knot is tied in fair.
Will you be quiet?
It's just... Praises.
Belay, my lad, belay! You don't understand.
Oh, Sir Belay, if it's absolutely necessary.
Belay? Certainly not. You see, it's like this. As all my ancestors are alive, it follows as a matter of course that the eldest of them is the family baronet. And I revert to my former condition.
Well, I think it's exceedingly unfair.
Here, great uncle, allow me to present you.
Sir Rupert Murgatroyd, Baronet of Ruddigore.
Fallacy somewhere, I fancy.
For a start, it's just fallacy somewhere at the end. There's no I fancy. I got that wrong. So you'll see that I added a little bit of cut text at the start of it. I don't think I would include it if I was doing a stage show. Like maybe if I was filming it, I might include it. Because it is lovely, but I do think it maybe makes the final scene drag, so I can see why it was cut, basically. But it's very funny when Roderick says, it is amazing how foggy one becomes over time. Can't remember what the line was now. I do think that this, as a closing scene, is maybe not one of the better ones. Like, when you think how snappy the Iolanthe one was, to be fair, I was filming this mostly with Dan, and our kind of pacing wasn't very sharp as when I just did the lines and edit it myself, so maybe that did unfairly make it look as if it was dragging a bit more than the others, but there's a lot to get through. So I do think that even though I've just been complaining about the scene being long and draggy, I would still always contain the ghosts coming out of their frames and Sir Rupert at the end. It's such a better ending, and like all the ghosts coming alive just kind of makes way more sense than bringing back the buxom blades. I mean, for a start, that means they have to get their costumes back on. And who cares who they are? This is such a better ending. And I even saw someone put on Facebook recently something like, oh, why would anyone ever do the ghost ending? It's awful. It's like, what? Why would you ever do the other ending? There's the buxom blades. But I can see why maybe people do it because it's a bit quicker. I think I actually did that when I last directed it. But that was because I didn't really have any other ghosts to bring back, because most of the people on stage were principals and were only ghosts temporarily. But is the solution good? I mean, it's not unlike the one in Iolanthe. I mean, just the whole kind of there being like a little glitch in the kind of law and the curse, and they just discover it. But I mean, if that really was the case, I mean, presumably these people's like hearts stopped beating and they were put in the ground. So like they're still dead. But I do find the kind of legal death thing quite amusing. And with that and a little bit of dialogue that is usually cut, that I certainly never heard before, it was just in the Bradley, it's very much like the plot point in The Grand Duke with Julia and Ernest and that whole song. But that would not make me your wife, that would make me your widow. Then be my widow, my little dainty, winning, winsome widow. But what would be the good of that? My good friends, I would marry again within a month. So that whole thing, it's very like what happens here, and that did not pass me by, Gilbert, that you could have reused that. It's fine, Gilbert has his things that he uses. That is the idea I intended to convey. Which 3 characters say that? One of them will surprise you. So, dramatic emotional impact. I think that all these Act 2 scenes are like a little bit like, oh, okay, dramatically. We've kind of forgotten about Rose and Dick by this point, so honestly, this one only has like a 7 for me. A 7 only if you actually direct it with the weight it needs. But there's a lot of stuff happening. It's been a long time since we've seen these characters. Robin just suddenly having this idea and coming in. I kind of wish we'd seen him get the idea. I would have preferred that, I think. Character? I mean, why is it Robin that discovers this? There's nothing about Robin that would make me think he discovered this. Like, what made him come across it? Was he about to unalive himself and then that's how he got the idea? I have no idea. Or maybe he was just contemplating what he was about to do. I just think it would have been better if we'd seen him discover it. That it would have helped him understand a bit about his character's intentions. I'm going to give this a 15 for character. It's not egregious, I'm just not that massive of a fan of it. And narrative, I'm going to give an 8. I find it not like a amazingly satisfying ending, but it's fine. It is fine. And comedy, I love Rupert's fallacy somewhere at the end. And the madly, passionately, madly, and Dick Dauntless immediately getting with Zora. I mean, that has to happen at some point between that line and his verse in the Act 2 finale, which I always think should be included. So yeah, This scene, it's quite funny, so I'm going to give it a 13, a gentle 13. And then we are ready to rank all of them. And amazingly, again, I got through with only one tie, which I just quietly corrected myself. But here we go. In 17th place, we have that very throwaway scene between Robin and Gideon Crawl. In 16th place, we have the other Robin and Gideon Crawl scene, which I find just a little bit unsatisfying, but it's not awful. In 15th place, we have the very first scene, actually, with Dame Hannah and the bridesmaids. Just one of the few opening scenes that I don't think really packs very strong of a punch. It's more the second song that does that. Number 14, I have given to the scene between Robin and Adam. It's very charming, but nothing particularly mind-blowing about it. Number 13, I have given to the scene with Hannah and Rose. I think there are very funny bits in this scene. It's just not one that particularly screams as being very funny. Very lovely monologue from Rose, nice moments in it, good for their characters, just not hugely funny. In 12th place, we have the pre-Act 2 finale scene. I'm actually relatively surprised this came so high, but there are some lovely moments in it. It's very funny. It's very kind of self-aware. Number 11, I have given to the scene with Robin, Rose and Dick in Act 2. I think all the stuff with the flag flying over her head, and then the funny thing, well, this case of a baronet doing this hasn't been considered. It is a funny scene, and it's also very sweet and dramatic, as long as it's played with the correct weight. Number 10, I'm giving to Robin's monologue. Very short, but just extremely powerful, and some of the most beautiful language in this show, and maybe even in the canon. Number 9, I am giving to the scene between Rose and Robin. I think the only reason it came in 9th place rather than higher is just because it's quite short, but it's just so relatable, it's so real. That is just the way that people talk to each other. Gilbert was just so dead on with these characters and the way they talk to each other. Number 8, I go to the scene with Robin and Dick. This is such a good introduction to Dick's character. I think that the scenes after where he's more established himself are generally kind of funnier, but this is a great introduction. It's lovely to kind of see who he is and just what a sweetheart he is. And, you know, he does slip up a bit later, but he really is a very wholesome character, and I really want people to have some more Dick Dauntless love. He is really one of my favourite tenors. Number 7, I've given to the scene between Margaret, Despard and Robin, and some people might be surprised that this has come so low, but I just think the scenes above it are just amazing. I mean, this one got 52 out of 60, so I think the world of this scene, and yeah, I still think there are 6 scenes better than it. But yeah, nothing really bad to say about this one. Just maybe it's quite long and unwieldy. Maybe Robin isn't quite as funny as the other two. It's just maybe it's not well balanced as some of the other scenes. Number 6, I've given to Robin, Dame Hannah and Roderick. What a dramatic, emotional roller coaster this scene is. So much action in it. Like, probably more action than most scenes in the canon. And yet it ends with this extreme pathos. And it also manages to be quite funny. So really a very good scene. Number 5, I've given to Dick and Rose. That's where she's struggling what to do, reading up and down from the Book of Etiquette. And considering this, I thought, was one of my favourite scenes in the canon, there's 4 better than it in this opera alone. Ruddigore is going to do very well in the overall dialogue video, I venture to believe. Number 4, I've given to Rose, Dick and Robin in Act 1. This is a song before sailing in life's oceans wide. This is such a cracking scene. It's absolutely hilarious. All these characters have got different motivations. Nobody really knows how to speak to anyone else. It's just like everyone's forgotten like how to communicate properly, and everyone's interests are so out of sync with each other's, and status is all over the place. It's just so funny. Number 3, I have given to Robin and the Ghost. This is a scene that I didn't realise I liked as much as it did, but it's got so much narrative, it's so funny. The characters, including Roderick, even though as a ghost he's not vibrant, but his character does still seem to jump off the page at you. Like the way I read his lines, it was so silly, but I also think it was quite real. And this scene, it is hilarious, and it also can be moving. You can just do whatever you want with this scene. Number 2, I've given to the scene between Rose and Margaret. Again, one of my favourite scenes in the canon. Just so much emotion here. You learn so much about these characters by just seeing them interact with each other. It's just the second best, like, mismatch of energy, I think, in the opera. But the first best, the number 1 scene with where the balance between these two characters is just sublime. Dick and Despard before you understand, I think I do. How amazing is just the mismatch of energy in this scene. These two characters are so out of place, and yet the scene is so pacey, and so much narrative gets exported, gets transmitted to the audience. I don't know how to speak anymore. This scene is just truly a work of art. There's so much, it's so funny, delivers so much narrative. The characters in it are perfect. There's the balance of characters. Gilbert putting these two together, it was the perfect spot for these two to meet after everything they've been through, after they've been established. And Despard hasn't even been established for long, and yet it's just so, he is so immediately realised that it doesn't matter. And the dramatic emotional impact, I've given it a 10. Despard just learned that the last 10 years were like a lie. More than 10 years, 20 years. And Dick Dauntless has kind of made that decision to kind of stab his best friend in the back. And these characters are going through big things. And it's also hilarious! If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. I really hope you enjoyed this ranking. I think this probably has the best dialogue in the canon. I don't know, Mikado's dialogue was so good as well. I didn't even rank the Mikado scenes. I need to kind of do that loosely as well. But what a triumph. Ruddigore, like one of Gilbert's best operas when it comes to ensemble of characters. And just the way the scenes are constructed, the way the story is put together. What a fabulous time. Thank you for watching. I have been and will continue to be Rachel GNS Middle.